In just 3 days at Gettysburg, over 50,000 men were killed, wounded, or went missing. Homes and churches transformed into makeshift hospitals. Fields became graveyards. In a grim act of division, only Union soldiers were buried in the new National Cemetery. The bodies of Confederate dead were left to decay where they fell. Even this hard-won Union victory couldn't erase the deep horror gripping the nation. The triumph of the 54th Massachusetts, the first African-American regiment to see major combat, was tragically overshadowed by violent draft riots erupting in New York City. Angry mobs, enraged by the conscription laws, burned draft offices, targeted churches, and murdered black citizens. Meanwhile, the South was facing its own crisis, economic collapse, and dwindling hope. This desperation boiled over on August 21, 1863. Confederate guerrilla leader William Clark Quantrill led his raiders into Lawrence, Kansas, burning the town and slaughtering at least 160 men and boys. This wasn't war. It was a massacre. Back on the main front, Union forces managed to capture the vital rail hub of Chattanooga, Tennessee. However, the Confederates scored a rare victory nearby at the Battle of Chickamauga and laid siege to the city, hoping to starve the Union Army out. General Lee clashed with General Meade again in the Bristoe Campaign. President Lincoln traveled to Pennsylvania and delivered his immortal Gettysburg Address, redefining the purpose of the war. But the Confederate momentum was short-lived. The siege of Chattanooga failed, and General Bragg was forced to retreat into Georgia. Another Confederate siege, this time at Knoxville, also collapsed. The South had started the war with surprising strength, but the North's immense industrial might was finally turning the tide. Both sides were exhausted and desperately wanted the war to end, but neither was willing to surrender. Lee still clung to the hope that low morale in the North would doom Lincoln's upcoming re-election. But Lincoln had a different strategy in mind. He offered a path to reconciliation. Any Confederate willing to swear an oath of allegiance to the United States would have their rebellious acts forgiven. It was a bold move, a political gamble aimed at weakening the Confederacy from within. By now, the Union was ready to cripple the Confederacy for good. The plan was to launch a massive campaign, the largest combined Army-Navy operation of the entire war, designed to cut deep into vital Southern territory. The primary target was Shreveport, the Confederate capital of Louisiana. If it fell, the door would be open for a Union push straight into Texas. But from the very beginning, the Red River Campaign was plagued with problems. Rear Admiral David Dixon Porter agreed to command the naval forces, but only under the assumption that the brilliant Major General William T. Sherman would lead the land troops. Sherman fully intended to, but General Ulysses S. Grant insisted Sherman stay with him for the upcoming spring campaigns. Instead, Major General Nathaniel P. Banks was placed in command, a decision that frustrated both Sherman and Porter. Sherman was so concerned that he sent 10,000 of his best soldiers as a precaution, explicitly warning Porter that this was in case Banks abandoned the naval forces if his own troops got into trouble. And there was good reason for concern. Banks wasn't a career military commander. He was a politician, driven by a desire for military prestige, hoping this campaign would give him both battlefield experience and a glorious victory to boost his political career. His plan was a logistical nightmare. It relied on 3 completely separate forces that had no reliable way to communicate with each other. There was Porter's fleet of 19 gunboats navigating the treacherous Red River. There were Banks's own 20,000 troops marching overland from New Orleans. And finally, Major General Frederick Steele was supposed to march with 10,000 men from Little Rock, Arkansas. One Union general would later call the entire operation one damn blunder from beginning to end. The Red River Campaign collapsed into a chaotic and humiliating Union retreat. For the struggling Confederacy, it was a desperately needed boost to morale. Around this same time, another dark chapter unfolded at Fort Pillow, Tennessee. After capturing the fort, Confederate troops under Nathan Bedford Forrest massacred more than 300 surrendered Union soldiers, many of them black. In furious response, General Grant immediately halted all prisoner of war exchanges. He refused to resume them until the South agreed to treat black prisoners of war the same as white ones, a landmark demand for equal treatment. Grant was also preparing for what would become one of the most brutal battles of his career, the Battle of the Wilderness. His orders were simple and relentless. "You will follow Lee's army," Grant told his commanders. "Where he goes, you will go also. No more retreating after a single battle." This time, the Union Army would stick to Lee like glue. The massive Union force commanded by Generals Warren, Hancock, Sedgwick, and Burnside marched into the tangled, dense forests of Spotsylvania County, Virginia. This was known as the Wilderness. Lee, still recovering from the devastating loss of his top general, Stonewall Jackson, saw an opportunity. He pushed his own commanders, A.P. Hill and Richard Ewell, to trap the Union Army in the thick woods. Here, the Confederates' familiarity with the terrain would give them a deadly, terrifying advantage against the larger Northern Army. The stage was set for a battle of unprecedented ferocity. Thank you for watching. If you want to learn more about this pivotal moment in history, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell.